With only 362 3 days until the NFL draft, we thought today would be a good opportunity to look back at this past weekend's draft and give our grades. And I can hear the draft Karens now. You can't grade a draft before they play. Um, this is great. This is the approach. I say this every year. I mean, we spend some of us a full year, some of us many months, some of us a few weeks, researching, preparing to talk about the draft because we enjoy it because we're draft geeks. That's what we do. And then somehow when the draft happens, we're supposed to shut up and not talk about it for 3 years. That's ridiculous. And no one is. These aren't. No one is saying anyone failed or passed or whatever. We're not going to know what's what for at least a few years. This isn't saying these are the final grades on what the Jets did and this was right, wrong, or the other. It's more about the approach. And, I just did an episode, did Scott Mason's show and planned on doing this one right after. And same thing I said on there. This isn't, we're not trying to say that the verdict is in and we know what's what. This is a chance to sit down and the example I gave, yes, an extreme example, but if the Jets took 7 punters this weekend, you'd have some things to say. You wouldn't be waiting. You'd be like, what the hell are they doing? You'd be drafting the approach. What were they thinking? Why did they do that? So no, they didn't draft 7 punters, but they did some things that I agree with and they did some things that I don't agree with. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Jets draft 2024 graded, and again, more the approach than the results because we don't know the results yet. Pick 1, Jets pick 1, 11 overall, Olu Fashanu, Penn State offensive tackle. No secret here if you've been following this show. My feeling, and it's just my feeling is that pick should have been reserved, whether it had Roma Dunze fallen, whether it was a Dunze or Bowers. I even kicked around the possibility of, do you take Brian Thomas there? It would be early, but you're getting a day one pass catcher impact guy. That's what I felt that should have been reserved for. I felt the approach should have been, we're in win now mode. Let's go ahead and get a pass catcher who can help our offense immediately. And for 17 games, ideally, if you stay healthy. And then we'll go out and sign a veteran tackle so we've got some depth there. And then maybe draft a tackle later on. So there were other ways to go about this. It didn't have to be a tackle in round 1. But on the flip side, you got a very good player. Well, someone who we think will be a very good player at a critical position. And now the goal, the hope is that you have a 10-year starter. We'll know that in a few years. Well, we'll know that in 10 years, but we'll know in a few years if the pick was a good one or not. Also, everything you read about Fashanu, listening to him deal with the media, some of the interviews he did, you get the impression really, really solid guy. And I think that's something this team want. I think after the Elijah Moore thing, I think this team, when possible, they're gonna character is gonna be a priority. Every now and then they're gonna veer from it, as most teams do. If you're desperate for a certain position, you might sign a guy that you ordinarily wouldn't. But with all things being equal, if they're players with similar grades, I think we're going to see the Jets look at character in the near future or for the foreseeable future. So Olu Fashanu, didn't like the approach because I wanted an impact day one guy. Like the fact that they got a very good player who appears to be a very good person who plays a very important position. So I'm giving that pick's a B+ for me, which it's nothing. That's the fact it's not an A or an A+ is nothing about the player, because this is, of course we're going to consider the player to some degree here, but it's largely about the approach. And the approach is, it's a move for the future in a year that it's supposed to be about now. So a little bit of contradiction there. Next pickup, Malachi Corley, 3rd round, 65 overall. Put him down as round 2 in the article. You can go to jetnation.com, the front page, see all this. Change it to round 3, but it still shows up as 2 in the forums. Anyway, round 3, 65 overall, Malachi Corley, Western Kentucky. If you heard me talk this weekend, I said a few times during the pre-draft process that my ideal draft would be Brock Bowers at 10, would have been 11 now, and then Corley with the next pick. That to me would have been ideal. You're getting two guys um, who are basically pass catchers who make pick up large chunks of yards after the play, after the catch. That's what they did in college. That's what you're expecting them to do with the pros. So the Jets could have had two really big time difference makers right off the bat. Doesn't turn out that way, but you get Corley. Corley's skill set suits what Rodgers does. I talked about this during the draft. There are those who are concerned, and I understand, that the way he was used at Western Kentucky, and he didn't run a complete route tree, and there were certain things. There was a lot of bubble screens. I get all that, but the fact I'm not worried about it because if a player comes out and the things he does better than anything else, the strongest aspects of his game come together perfectly with what your team is doing on offense, pick him and then work on the other stuff later. I mean, listen, none of these guys are finished products. Anyone you take is going to need some work in some regard, some more than others, right? So take Malachi Corley, who's going to need some work to run a more complete route tree. But what you get is a day one guy whose strengths play well to this offense, especially if you put him in the slot. Once Mike Williams is healthy and you put Garrett on the outside, Mike Williams on the other side, they're going to be able to carry defenders down the field and then leave some room underneath for Corley to work with, whether he's running a route over the middle or you're hitting him on a quick screen. He's going to try to cut back inside and beat some linebackers. Tons of film of him doing that in college. Jets should be trying to do the same thing. So Corley, to me, good value, great fit. I'm giving that pick an A plus. Wanted it, as I said several times throughout the pre-draft process. Said that would be an ideal scenario for me, would be Corley in that spot. Next pick, round 4, pick 134 overall, Braelon Allen, running back out of Wisconsin. Now, here's a guy who I've liked, again, watched him as a freshman and loved him, followed him since then. Wasn't as productive this year as I thought he would be. I thought he would be an absolute monster in his final season. There were some changes to the Wisconsin offense. Maybe that's what impacted him. But when you're talking about explosion out of the blocks, when you're talking about contact balance, when you're talking about ability to run guys over, this is what Braelon Allen brings, and that is something the Jets are missing. If he's your goal line guy with this offense, he might get you a handful of touchdowns this year. Let him be your goal line back. Give him the ball inside the 5 and see, if this offensive line is healthy and with his running style in close quarters in the red zone at the goal line, he could be a guy who gets in the end zone a handful of times, like I said. So really like the pick. Not an A because, my hope, I know Joe Douglas loves running backs. I did mocks where I had them taking a running back and people were coming at me. Don't, stop with the running backs. They're not taking a running back. And I kind of felt like, I hope they don't. My hope was go with a veteran, wait till camp cuts. Somebody will get cut who can be your running back too. Or if you're gonna take one, let it be late, let it be around 6 or 7, or grab a couple of top UDFAs. I mean, when you're going for a UDFA, one of the things these guys are looking at, maybe the biggest thing, is where do I have a chance to play? Where do I have the best shot to contribute? Well, if they hadn't drafted a back and they only had Breece Hall, if I'm a UDFA, I'm going to look and go, that team is loaded on offense, but they need another back. I'm going to go there. So you may have been able to get the best UDFA. But as it stands, they take Allen there, pick 134. And again, good player, not necessarily the direction I would have gone. That's not to say whether it'll work out or not, but a B for that pick for that reason. I think there were some linemen on the board who would have been more benefit. And listen, well, I'll get to it in a second. I'll mention it in a second. Let's first do the next pick. 5th round, pick 171 overall, Jordan Travis, quarterback out of Florida State. If you were watching me live, that one, I believe, drew some applause from me. Probably my favorite pick. I love the Corley pick too, but this in terms of, it's been a very long time since the Jets drafted a talented passer who could then sit behind a quality veteran or two, as Travis will have the opportunity to do, and learn from those guys and develop into an NFL quarterback. That's obviously the hope. Will it happen? We'll have to wait and see. But I love I love the approach. I love the mindset. I love what they're thinking here. A lot of people thought, myself included, I thought Travis would go a little bit earlier. Of course, the injury, his ankle injury may have hurt his stock. So he ends up going in the 5th round, 171 overall. that pick to me is an A. You got a capable young quarterback who can run, who protects the football, um, respected leader by all accounts. So love that pick. That one gets an A. Then just a few moments later, round 5 again, pick 173, Isaiah Davis out of South Dakota State. I'm not the only one, folks. I mean, by and large, Monty says Ayuk will be the Jets wide receiver. Monty, where are the Jets getting the money for this? They have no cap space right now. None. Zero cap space. He's probably going to want $30 million a year. So how are you with this current team freeing up $25-30 million? He's not coming. Davis, again, have nothing against the player. After the pick, and I was upset about it, and I went and dug into my archives to see what I had on him film-wise. Some good stuff, some impressive stuff, good feet, runs hard, used as a lead blocker, so he stick his face in the fan, not afraid. So a lot of aspects of his game that I like, but he's an RB3 with Christian Mahogany still on the board. Now, Christian Mahogany, with any player, anytime a guy goes 100 picks later than you envisioned, you're kind of like, what's going on here? Why isn't this guy off the board? Christian Mahogany is, I think he checks in at 330, 320, 330. Moves really well for a big guy and just obliterates defenders, blows guys up. Wrote a draft profile on him for JetNation.com because he was a guy that I really hoped the Jets would target. They didn't. Can't believe he went in the 6th round. You take Christian Mahogany in that spot, and you may have drafted a guy who, if you're willing to work him in at left guard, he may have been a starter for you this year at some point, taking over for John Simpson. And instead of drafting a potential starter on the O-line, you get an RB3. He might do some things on specials. Don't get me wrong. There is that. I'm not discounting the importance of special teams, but a starting lineman versus a backup backup running back. And of course, for Izzy Abanikanda, listen, there was no bigger Izzy Abanikanda fan than me. It appears I was wrong about what his future would hold with the Jets. Have to imagine he's gone now. I hope not. I'm thinking in my mind, all right, maybe there's a plan here that I don't see. Maybe they view Davis as a fullback. And they're going to, fullbacks don't get used anymore. But if any team were to find themselves an athletic player like Davis, or, he would be very athletic for a fullback. If you're going to take a guy like that and incorporate him, if he's willing to be a lead blocker like he was in college, and you start throwing him the football out of the backfield and he can become a weapon, go ahead. But I don't know that the Jets are going to do that. I don't believe they are. But again, trying to envision a scenario, how does Izzy Abanikanda hang around? And that's the only way I can see is if one of these guys is strictly special teams, or if one of these guys is going to be a fullback instead of a halfback. I mean, it would have to be Davis. Even though Allen could fit the bill, he's 225, 235. But I think he's just such a good running back. I couldn't see that. Let's see what we got here. Alon says Douglas day 3 performance leaves a lot to be desired. Approved the Detroit trade, but the others made no sense. Trading JFM for peanuts, a direct result of his poor free agent signing. The JFM thing was tough. I hated it. I still hate it. I hate the compensation. Flip it the other way around. If the Jets could give up a future 6th round pick for a guy who you can pencil in for 50 pressures, you'd be doing backflips. And you'd be talking about how you ripped that other team off. What a heist. How do we get such a good player for so little? That's what happened with the Jets with the JFM deal. And listen, people, I tweeted that I wasn't happy about it, and I have people trying to explain to me the financial aspect of the trade as if I don't get it. I understand why they had to trade him. That doesn't mean the compensation didn't suck. Even if, they had to trade. Fine, I get it. I wrote an article before the draft happened saying he could be a guy they deal because they need cap space. I wrote about it happening before it happened. Don't tell me why it had to happen. It's the fact that you got nothing for him, essentially. You got a pair of socks is what you got for a guy who gives you 50 pressures a year. That's a bad deal. Garbage deal. Duh. I'm I'm the guy who's always saying that the salary cap is real when everyone else is telling me it's fake. Salary cap's not a real thing. You know how many people I've had tell me that? And I try to explain, if you have enough money tied up in players and you've reworked enough guys and you have little flexibility in where you can move money around, that's when the cap becomes real and guys have to go. That's why Amari Cooper isn't a Cowboy anymore. And that's why John Franklin Myers isn't a Jet anymore, because the cap is flexible, it's malleable, there's some loopholes, there's some tricks, but eventually you can run out. And the fact that Laken Tomlinson was such a huge bust and Zach Wilson, they picked up so much of his cap, though the Jets are sitting at over $40 million in dead cap space, with Wilson and Tomlinson accounting for roughly half of it. Charles T, how we doing, Charles? Let's see. Yes, money is the reason why. Monty says Izzy's gone. Teams rarely comment on players in July, but they hinted that he was lazy. I don't remember them hinting that, and I watched with Izzy pretty closely. I heard them say they weren't thrilled with his blocking, and some guys, that's just a thing they don't get. Sometimes there are guys that, and I'm sure it's frustrating as hell for coaches, but I'm sure if they didn't like his blocking, I'm sure they saw that in the pre-draft process and thought, all right, we can coach that out of him. Maybe they couldn't. I like I said, I hope there's a path to him returning, but I don't see that being the case. So the Isaiah Davis pick, to me, it gets a D. And it's not, look, Davis might go down as one of the best running backs in team history. I'm not knocking the player. I'm knocking the fact that they took an RB3 with, and I think I said it the other day. I know between the lack of sleep and doing my show and appearing on Scott on a Play Like a Jet a few times, I forget what I'm saying where. But I think it's funny that I'm the guy, because I wanted Brock Bowers. I had so many people tell me, you don't understand. It's about the O-line. It's about protecting Aaron Rodgers. What don't you understand about that? And now I'm the one saying, where are the O-linemen? You took one? Your backups aren't great. Wes Schweitzer, nice, good backup level guy. Hansen looked okay against the Texans last year. Had a decent game and a half. Might be a player. Not saying he isn't. But you need some depth there. Max Mitchell, I don't think he's going to work. I think Max Mitchell probably has a better chance to stick if they move him to guard. And maybe that's a plan. I don't know. I think he might be better suited there, though. But I'd feel a lot better if they'd gotten another lineman in this draft rather than two running backs. So I'm looking at Davis like, might be a good player, even if he is. RB3, how much is he going to play this year? Again, if everyone stays healthy or relatively healthy, what's he going to get? 70 carries? Is that more valuable than a lineman who may have pushed for a starting job? I would argue no. So that's a D. Again, not on the player, on the approach. Quantez Stiggers, CFL corner. Here's a guy. Great story. Initially heard some tidbits of the story, and I'll do the Reader's Digest version. So he apparently had moved away from home. His father passed away. He did the right thing, moved back home to raise and be a mentor to to be the grown up in the house, the man in the house, man of the house, for his siblings, for his younger siblings. Admirable, great, love when you see people, stepping up to take care of their younger siblings, and that's what he did. And while he was home, or after moving back home, this was the great part. I'd heard about the league. I'd heard about the CFL after that. He played in a 7-on-7 fan-controlled league. These are like upstart leagues. I don't know how they're doing attendance-wise, but they're leagues that you play in, and the fans and the crowd get to vote electronically on what the next play should be. And so the fans call the plays, which is pretty ingenious. And he played in one of those leagues, played well enough that the CFL signed him, and then he dominated in the CFL, won Defensive Rookie of the Year, I believe, and then enters the NFL draft. But the coolest part of the story is that he only got in the 7-on-7 league because his mother was scrolling on the internet one day, and she saw she found a site, or I don't know if it was a pop-up, whatever it was. His mom came across a 7-on-7 league, and she knew he was good at football, and his mother signed him up to play in this league. And he said, okay. And he went and played, and he was great. And a CFL team saw that, and they signed him, and now he's in the NFL. Like that's an incredible story. That's some Disney stuff. Let this guy win a ring and make a movie about him. As far as the player, CFL. So I don't have all 22 on CFL. Don't have game film on CFL, or, even TV angles. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I've watched this guy. I know people will do that. Let me tell you about this player who I've never seen before. I've seen highlights and I've read scouting reports. And funny enough, his scouting report was the last one I read on an Emery Hunt's scouting guide, which I highly recommend, was the last one I read before the draft. After they picked him and I logged back in to look at someone else, my screen popped up and Stigger's popped up because he was the last one I looked at. But scouting reports say great athlete, really good hands. And again, you can only get so much from a highlight film, but you look at the highlights. The dude can elevate and win jump balls and pluck the ball out of the air. That's how he got a lot of his picks. So that's a B plus. It's a need. Yes, he's developmental, but we're talking 5th round at this point, 176th pick. So you got to, because look, you got Sauce, you got DJ Reed, you got Brandon Eccles. That's it. I mean, they probably need to add another corner at some point. Then the final pick of the draft, Jalen Key. So you watch a ton of Alabama when you're watching prospects. So I've seen some of Key, not a ton because I wasn't focusing in on him. But he is a versatile guy, moves around. He can play deep safety, he can play in the slot, covers tight ends. And as I always say, and I've believed this for years. I think they said with this, the Jets, their board was clear. They had nobody left on the board by the time they came up for Mr. Irrelevant. And Joe Douglas called all of his scouts in the room. This was, I believe, according to Connor Hughes, I believe. Joe Douglas called all of the scouts in the room and said, make a case for who we should take with this pick. And whoever made the case for Jalen Key, obviously made the best case. But I've always said, if you're sitting in round 7 and you got a late pick and you don't know who it's going to be, can't go wrong. Find me a guy who started for Nick Saban or a guy who started at Georgia. Like, you're talking round 7 draft eligible player, and I don't know who I'm taking. Give me someone who played for one of those guys, because I know there's something there. Don't know if there'll be anything, but there's something there. Also a little concerning, like, your board should have enough players on it. I know not everybody's going to be on the board, but I don't know if teams are. Every year you hear a team, oh, our board was blank. Well, did you not prepare? Come on. Not saying it's an easy job. Not saying it's easy, but I think that's kind of openly admitting that you were not properly prepared for your thing that you have a year to prepare for. Some comments here. Leonard Taylor is the hit or miss UDFA. Like McGregor and the UConn end. The UConn end is Eric Watts. He was at the Senior Bowl, long, lengthy guy. I got aggravated because I know I have highlights on him, and I tried to find them last night. Like I said, too many drives. I have 50,000 thumb drives floating around with player highlights on them, and some of them get lost. So let's see. Tim says, would have loved the DT in the 4th, like Makai Wingo, considering JFM was on the move. A young, affordable DT on a 4-year deal to partner and learn from Q would be ideal. And that might be why Elon is commenting, because that's kind of, I feel the same way. And I said this, and then I saw people say it on the Jet Nation message board. There are actually undrafted free agents that had the Jets, if you had flipped it, if the Jets, for example, didn't take Davis, but they took Leonard Taylor, and maybe if they didn't take Key, who, again, I don't dislike, but if you had taken Jaheim Battle, and it probably just because I'm more familiar with him, I've seen a little bit more of him. But some of the UDFAs I like more than the draft picks. And Taylor's one of them. McGregor, the edge out of Michigan, who was also at the Senior Bowl. Great motor, like great motor. Not as much bend as you'd want out of an edge, but I think he can still be a good player. He can be molded into a quality player. Because again, we say it all the time. Like, if you can say one positive thing about this Jets team, it's that this defensive coaching staff develops people. So overall, I gave so Jalen Key, I gave that a C+, not great, not terrible. Overall, B- for the draft itself. My logic there, 2 of the top 3 picks are used on guys who will be part-time players. Your tackle's going to be a part-timer. He'll see the field. Let's not kid ourselves. But there is a chance maybe he only plays 7 games. Maybe he plays 9 games. To me, 9 games isn't worth the 11th pick. If he plays 10 plus, 11, like you get into like 11 games starting. Okay, now we can talk about having used the 11th pick. But I feel like 7, 8, 9 games, you could have patched that up with some of the veterans I've mentioned. Charles Leno is out there. We're not going to go through all the names again. Fleming, Leno. There's guys out there who you could have patched up for 9 games and made it work. Because again, even though we like Fashanu, I've just said it's B+, good player. Maybe he'll do what a lot of these guys do, and maybe he'll need a while. Maybe he'll be maybe he won't be very good for his first 7 or 8 games. And maybe those are the 7 or 8 games that you need him for. And then you're thinking, damn, too bad we didn't have a veteran to step in and, since this kid's not getting it. And I'm not saying he won't. Day one, he might be Orlando Pace, right? I'm not writing guys off. I'm not ripping anybody. I'm just saying it was a little questionable. So 2 of your top 3 guys between Fashanu and Braelon Allen, those guys may not see the field very much at all. That's in a win now season. 2 of your top 3 picks could spend the vast majority of their time on the bench. But again, love McCorley, love getting a developmental quarterback. So B- all in all for the class. Not terrible. If you change one of those guys out with an offensive lineman, let's see. Do you know of any other 500 team that didn't get a starter? Well, I mean, Corley's going to be, for all intents and purposes, he'll be a starter. He'll get a ton of playing time, but that's again, Monty, that this is especially in the top 3. I mean, with your top 3 picks, win now season, and you used your top 3, and only one of them is going to be a regular. Want the TJ Tampa? That would have been great value. There was who was the other corner who was there later? Was it Rakestraw who I really liked? There was somebody else. There was another corner I really wanted. The safeties. I would have liked Malik Mustafa. Surprised they didn't pursue Bo Braid as an undrafted free agent. Jaden Hicks was another guy. Could have gotten them late. Was loving this offseason until the draft and losing JFM. Yeah, look, the JFM thing stung. I like him more than most because people think only sacks matter. He's got a lot of fans who rip him, because he's not a 10, 15 sack a year guy. People look at pressures as like a joke. Oh, so he got some pressures. Yeah, they're important. They matter. Watch quarterbacks try to make a throw with somebody breathing down their neck as well as they can throw without someone breathing down their neck. So let's see. Any other? Yeah, I don't know, Monty. It's a good question. Any other sub 500 team or any other 500 teams who drafted 3 guys or a bunch of guys who won't start? Probably pretty unlikely. But it's weird to do it 2 years in a row. That's what makes it even stranger. To do it last year. JFM is also, and this is what I mean when I talk about JFM and when I say he's underappreciated. He can be a guy who gets pressure and he's strong against the run. Like, he is a very capable defender against the run and the pass. Is he overpaid at whatever he was due? 16 million, probably. But it's weird. The Jets said they couldn't come together on a number. But and unless it's wrong, I saw somebody tweet earlier. I haven't looked at I haven't confirmed this, but someone said his cap number in Denver this year is going to be under 8 million. I'm like, the Jets couldn't do that. Like, what were they asking him to do? Play for $3 million? Like, I don't know. I don't understand. But that's part of the value that JFM brings. He's got that flexibility to play inside, outside, tackle, or end, and he can be effective from both spots. And the Jets, to give up a guy with what he brings to the table to get a 6, I don't need people explaining to me that it's a salary cap move. Oh, really? Oh, thank you. I thought the Jets just couldn't resist a 2026 6th-round pick. Duh. Yeah, I get it. So that's where we are now. Draft is done, wrapped up. We're going to wrap this one up as well. Later in the week, myself, Chris Schubert, Dylan Terriman, we're going to have Dylan and Chris's takes on the draft, and we'll go a little bit more in depth on the UDFA class. I mentioned a few on here. There are always guys who we've not seen. I'm looking at some of these names, and it's a given. Some of these guys are coming out of never heard of the school, let alone knowing what the players can do. Some of them, there's some familiarity there. I don't have the names in front of me right now, but there's 8 or 9 guys who I look at and think, okay, I've watched him. But I like to get a better look That's why I usually wait a couple days till I do a full breakdown of the UDFAs. Anyone anyone coming out today saying that they've watched the University of Southwest Jacksonville State, Ohio, and they're going to tell you about this lineman, I'm skeptical. Let's just say I'm skeptical. So we'll have more coming up. Let's see. Do you think freed money opens up the possible? No, Charles. And listen, I could be wrong, but looking at what the JFM money freed up and what money the Jets had before that move, all that did was give them enough money to sign their rookies. The rookie draft class was estimated, and this, could be off by $1 million or $2 million. The rookie draft class was estimated to cost the Jets roughly $10 million to sign everybody. Remember, rookie wage scale, it's set now. There's no negotiating. You know ahead of time roughly how much you're going to need to sign your rookies. The Jets were going to need $10 million ballpark to sign their rookies. JFM saved them about $7 million. They were sitting at about $2 million before the Zach deal. That meant, so the Zach deal gave them another $2.5 million. So they were at about $4 million, just under $4.5 million. And then JFM gives you another 7-ish. So that put them at about 11. And again, this is all off the top of my head. This is off memory, what I remember being reported. Actually, as we're saying this, I realize I do have over the cap put up here right now. Let's see if they have an updated number on the Jets. The Jets, according to this, okay, so this has to reflect JFM because they were 2 something the other day. The Jets right now have $9.1 million in cap space, and their rookie class is going to cost them $10 million. So in all reality, the Jets have no cap space right now. And as I always point out, teams like to operate with a little bit of a cushion. Like once the season starts, you want $5 million to play with in case somebody becomes available, in case a player you really like gets cut for whatever reason from some team, or a team calls and says, hey, you know what? We don't have a spot for this guy right now, but we know you can need him. Well, what does he make? Well, he makes this much. You're going to have to pick up $4.5 million or $3 million, whatever it may be. So you want to have that little $5 million buffer. So as it stands right now, the Jets have, I would say, negative cap space because they have 9.1, and the rookie class should cost about 10. So the Jets need to free up $1 million to get to 0 in all reality. So not a good cap situation. As I mentioned, $48 million, I believe, in dead cap. Oh, that went up. That went up too because the JFM money. So the Jets currently $52 million in dead cap. That's disgusting. Lake and Tomlinson 10-7, JFM $9 million, Zach Wilson 8-4, CJ Uzama 5-9, Carl Lawson 5-8, Dwayne Brown 4-7, Jordan Whitehead 3-3, Mecole Hardman $2 million. That the league should waive that. That should be for him giving away game plans. Waive that $2 million. Quentin Jefferson 1-5, Michael Carter $200K, Nick Bawden $100K. So the Jets currently $52 million in dead money. We'll send that out actually. And hopefully they get that cleaned up. But, well, again, they're not going to get it cleaned up. It's hopefully they, by next year, excuse me, hopefully by next year that's all off the books. But for this year, for right now, they're sitting at $1 million. And in terms of guys they can renegotiate, they might have to. They might just have to restructure Quinnen Williams. That would save them $10 million. I think that's the way forward. Because you can't have 0. I think you restructure Quinnen and it kicks somebody down the road, but that's fine because it's Quinnen. And then you re-sign Hassan Reddick and you give him you get him to agree to a very low year 1 base salary. And then you can bring his number down because his number is 15 right now. If you can rework him, get him to take $5 million this year, that'll save you 10. So there's ways they can create a little bit of space. And I suspect they will because there's got to be some free agents they'd like to add. Justin Simmons, everyone keeps talking about that. I don't think anyone disagrees. That would be a good move. So there you have it. That's the Jets' current cap situation, current dead cap situation, and some of the guys they could rework. Quincy Williams, I mean, they gave him a deal last year, but the way he played, he's going to want a huge pay raise. I would see, and they have some void. I would like to see them tear up his deal, give him small money this year. I mean, he's only due $7, so you can't knock too much off. But let's get Quincy extended or get him a new deal with a smaller number this year. So there's some ways, but there's not a lot. There's not a lot of flexibility that this team has right now in terms of being able to create cap space, and they're going to have to do it. Like I said, if they want that buffer, if they want to pursue some free agents, they're going to have to get a little bit creative. Hopefully, it's Redick. That would be my preference. And DJ Reed. Sorry, that's the two ways I would do it. DJ Reed and Hassan Reddick combined for a $30 million cap hit. If you can rework them and knock 10, 15 million off this year's cap and push that money back in the new deal, that's the way I would go. That way you don't even have to worry about reworking Quinnen. So there's some ways for some money to be freed up, but not a ton. That'll wrap this one up. Just wanted to come on, talk draft, grade it. And no, it's not the fun. People are going to see this and they're going to go, I'm not even going to watch that video because you can't grade a draft the day after. They're not even going to watch the opening 10 seconds where I'm like, we're grading the approach. This isn't, nobody's saying that the grade is a pass or a fail because we don't know, but we do know the way they approached it. Listen, put all the names aside. Let's pretend we don't know who the players were. If I came to you before this draft and said, the Jets are going to draft more running backs than offensive linemen in this class, you'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? That's stupid. So that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Have a good one, Jets fans. We will catch you next time. Maybe sooner than that. Might be back if I get to watch enough of the UDFAs tonight. Maybe come back tomorrow and tell you what I find about them. But have a good one. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for everybody who tuned in during the draft. That was a lot of hours. I did come off for a couple of hours. Kind of wish I'd stayed on, but I was getting pretty agitated with the running back picks, and I was starving. But maybe next year. But have a good one.